and a big welcome to the first SLN webinar of 2021. Yes, sudden confusion with the year. But yeah, big welcome, and we're so excited to have you with us here today. Can't think of a more exciting way to start this series this year. We're going to be having a talk on both snow leopards and brown bears, which is quite new for the network perhaps, for the Snow Leopard Network. So really looking forward to that talk. And before we introduce the speakers, just a few housekeeping announcements. If we can keep our mics on mute, that'll be great. And we can have most of our questions at the end of the session, like at the end of the talk. But if you have questions, you can put it in the chat. And we have two speakers today, so they could, look at it during the chat. They might, during the session, they might answer in the chat, or otherwise at the end of the talk, I could also bring them up if you put your questions in the chat. Otherwise, we can just, you can also ask them at the end of the talk. So today we have two speakers with us. The first speaker is Charlotte Hacker, who is a PhD student with Duquesne University and a research associate with the Snow Leopard Conservancy. She works on a huge diversity of topics, mostly all related to different aspects of snow leopard conservation and ecology. Our second speaker for today is Dr. Yunchuan Dai, and he graduated from the Chinese Academy of Forestry. He is presently the Associate Researcher and Scientist at the Institute for Ecology and Environment Resources at Chongqing Academy of Social Sciences. So he works on different dimensions of negative human-wildlife interactions with a special focus on brown bears. So over to both of you, really looking forward to the talk today.
All right, great. Thank you so much for the introduction. I will go ahead and start sharing my screen. I'm going to be the one starting today. It's great to see so many of you here. I really appreciate it. I know Di and I are both really excited to talk about our work today. And I'm going to go ahead and start. And I do mostly molecular diet analysis and combination of social science to look at the interactions between human and carnivores within snow leopard habitat. And I am currently at Duquesne University. I graduate this summer. So if anyone knows of any postdocs or jobs, send them my way. But I'm also affiliated with the Chinese Academy of Forestry and then the Snow Leopard Conservancy. And I want to start by giving credit where credit is due. All of the work I'm presenting today is certainly not an isolated effort. It took many people working together to make this all happen. And specifically, the Chinese Academy of Forestry has been huge in leveraging all of this work. I got off of a plane in the summer 2017 in Beijing, absolutely terrified. And they just took me right in, and I've been going back and working with them ever since. And that is where Di and I met. And so this has been a really good testament to how these international cooperative relationships can do a lot for conservation efforts. Humans and wildlife have been interacting for millennia, but sometimes these interactions can be negative and have poor outcomes for either humans and or the wildlife. And so this can manifest in a number of forms. So think of like mice eating grain stores or elephant crop raiding, predators killing livestock. You have human injury and death, bears breaking into houses, which Di will get into later in the talk, and then human-animal injury and death, or animal injury and death. And because humans influence every corner of the world, this is a widespread issue, and it's increasing in intensity through time. And the mountains of Central Asia are no exception. And that's predominantly because many of the people living here make a living off of livestock herding. And so there's a number of domestic animals present within these landscapes, and these are really unique ecosystems in Central Asia. And so all of these different domestic animals are living in conjunction with wildlife, including snow leopards. So including a larger bodied predator that primarily likes to eat medium to large bodied hoofstocks. You can probably imagine where I'm going with this. Snow leopards kill livestock. It's something that has caused a lot of conflict and difficulties in snow leopard conservation, this can have a number of negative outcomes. So livestock loss means income loss. And so herders are negatively affected by this, and it can impact the local economy financially. It also prompts negative attitudes towards snow leopards, as well as the entities that are working to protect them. And in large scale, it can disrupt ecosystem function when snow leopards are solely targeting livestock and not targeting and controlling the populations of their prey. And then in extreme cases, it can also cause retaliatory killings. And so understanding this is really important because it can help us mitigate these conflicts. This is a really complex and dynamic issue. And so one of the ways we can start putting pieces of the puzzle together is by actually better understanding snow leopard diet in and of itself. And so what we can look at is wild prey use versus domestic prey use, and understanding diet and learning more about snow leopard ecology, behavior, as well as the habitats that they live in. And so there's a number of questions we can answer. So aside from knowing what snow leopards are eating, we can look at what are key wild prey species, how often do they take livestock, is there a certain species of livestock they target, how does this vary through space and time, and what is the dietary breadth of snow leopards? So do they show potential adaptability to large-scale landscape changes that might come on because of climate change and cause shift in current wild prey bases, causing them to perhaps depend more on livestock if they can adapt. And there have been a number of previous studies that have studied snow leopard diet. This is a figure from a book chapter that was published last year that is available online if you want to dive more into all of those studies. But the method that we're particularly interested in is this conservation technology tool called DNA Meta Barcoding. And DNA Meta Barcoding is a non-invasive technique whereby we go into snow leopard habitat, we collect the scat that we believe to be of carnivore origin, and then we extract the DNA from that scat. And we amplify and sequence a short segment of a gene that is shared by all of our possible snow leopard prey species, but is divergent or different enough to tell each of those prey species apart when we do our data analyses. So we sequence the gene segments that we find in every single scat sample, and then we basically throw all of those sequences that we got at reference sequences that we've already downloaded from an online database. So we reference sequences for a prey that we already know. So we're essentially taking all of our data and throwing it at the wall and seeing what sticks. We're taking all of these sequences from each scat, throwing it at a reference database and seeing where those sequences align to confirm that A, the scat definitely came from a snow leopard, and B, what the snow leopard ate by looking at the prey DNA that's also present. And we decided to do this at a larger scale to begin with. So this paper came out a couple of weeks ago and it is available online now. And we ended up genetically determining the prey items in 131 scat samples from 4 different range countries that corresponded with these broad 6 different regions. And just to share some of the results overall that we got from that, we ended up finding 14 different species in the diet. And the dominant prey that we identified were these medium to larger bodied hoofstock, which we expected, and those varied by country as expected based on prey availability. So these would be species that you would want to ensure protection of if you want to be able to support snow leopard populations within these particular areas. But we also found small mammals and a bird species present. So I like to call these snow leopard snacks. We're still not sure what role they exactly play in snow leopard diet, but they certainly seem to be able to sustain snow leopards in between larger kills and larger meals. And then of course, we also found a wide breadth of livestock. So we had domestic goat, domestic sheep, domestic yak, cow, horse, as well as pig. So many different livestock species present in the diet. And investigating livestock in the diet more, we decided to just compare our medium to large bodied prey. So we're removing the bird species as well as the small mammals that we found in the diet. That left us with 101 occurrences of dietary items. And we saw that over a quarter of those occurrences were domestic animals. So that kind of speaks to the volume of livestock that snow leopards are pursuing in terms of resource use. And this would indicate a pretty significant reliance on livestock as a food source. It's definitely feeding into their repertoires. And then looking at China and Kyrgyzstan, you can see those sample sizes are low. We did not detect livestock in the diet, and that could be because the sample sizes are too low, or we don't have livestock present in that area. So for example, in Kyrgyzstan, we didn't expect to find livestock because livestock aren't kept in the area where we sampled. But in the countries that have sufficient sample sizes to kind of get a better idea of what's going on, like Pakistan and Mongolia, we can see that anywhere from a quarter to a third of the frequency of prey items were actually domestic animals, which may speak to difficulties and conflicts that herders are facing in the region with snow leopards. But it's not enough to just go in, collect your scat, and leave. We need to be talking with people that live with snow leopards. They know more about snow leopards than we'll probably ever know, and they're huge in terms of making long-term conservation efforts successful. And so we really need to be including them in these conservation management decisions and research that impact them. And so we wanted to get livestock loss from the view of the herder. We ended up doing this in Yunchuan Prefecture in Qinghai Province, China, and we designed this scientific survey to answer a series of questions that we could then potentially link to the shaping of positive versus negative attitudes of herders towards snow leopards. And this paper was published last year, so it is available if you want more details on that particular paper. But I'm going to be sharing with you the infographic that went along with that publication to just walk you through some of the findings. We ended up finding that herders in general, like with previous studies, found they had positive attitudes overall towards snow leopards. And that's despite the fact that nearly half of the 73 herders we interviewed had lost livestock to what they believed to be a snow leopard within the last 5 years. We didn't find any management in terms of using predator-proof corrals or human guarding to be correlated with animal loss. And we found that in general, herders found predation to be the greatest threat to their livestock. And then when looking at what shapes positive versus negative attitudes, we ended up finding that more years of formal education and less livestock loss they were the drivers of positive attitudes, whereas the drivers of having negative attitudes towards snow leopards were fewer years of formal education, lower importance of snow leopards attributed to religion, and then surprisingly, also less livestock loss. So less livestock loss seems to feed in shaping both positive and negative attitudes. And I think that just speaks to how complex human wildlife dimensions really are. Our survey wasn't able to really tease apart how livestock loss plays a role in shaping attitudes. We're thinking that it could be more to do with the level of frustration during a loss. So for example, if you're a herder that loses a healthy female, that might be more frustrating than if you lost an older male who was already sick, for example. And so over time, that would shape your perceptions and depending on the type of loss that you encountered. We did not find any instances of retaliatory killing, so that's really a difficult question to approach in these kinds of interviews. But one of the things that came up again and again was herders talking about wolves. So this wasn't a part of the survey, but they had said, wolves are a really big issue. Troopers aren't the only clue that there are many. So the Qinghai-Tibetan plateau has a very diverse predator guild, especially in terms of larger bodied carnivores. And so we really wanted to get at, okay, well, we have all of these different species. So who is eating what and how does this play into ecosystem dynamics overall? And so we set out on this kind of ambitious effort to sample across 3 different areas on the Qinghai-Tibetan plateau. So that includes Qilianshan, East Burn-Hanabuda Mountain, which is in Dulan County, and then Jido County in Yushu. And we ended up collecting 760 scats over the course of about 2 years. And we decided that across these 3 areas and overall, we were going to sequence all of our scats and figure out who deposited each scat and what each of those species ate. And this figure gives you an idea of the breadth of different animals that you might run into in terms of what you're actually collecting. So this is the who of our who is eating what question. This is all of our host species. And so we had some species that were not targets, so those got removed from the data set. And then we also had 4 dozen of our samples actually be regurgitated bird pellets. They were not actually scat samples, but that ended up being its whole other kind of separate study. So that was sort of a happy little accident. But when we're just looking at the terrestrial carnivores that we're actually interested in with this system, we ended up finding 9 different carnivores that ate other carnivores. And we ended up removing Asian badger and beech marten from the data set, but we did want to put that we did identify them. And so overall, we ended up having 7 of these different carnivores to work with within the system across these 3 regions. And bear with me, this table is really intense, but it's the best way I could think of to represent all of the data in terms of diet composition of all of our predators investigated. So at the top, you'll see each carnivore listed going across from left to right. And then below each name of the carnivore is the actual region. So O would be overall, which is all of the regions combined. QS is Qilianshan, EB or East Burn-Hanabuda Mountain, and then Y would be Yushu. And then going along the side, we have all of our prey items that we identified. And this is a heat map where white is representing no occurrences of that prey and that particular carnivore's diet for that region. And dark gray is representing a high occurrence or relative frequency of that dietary item in that carnivore's diet for that particular region. And so there are just a few things I want to point out to you from this data set. The first is looking at these really key species, and that seems to be blue sheep and pika. Every carnivore species ate blue sheep and ate pika, and so preserving those species would presumably be important as kind of a cast-all net to help preserve carnivore populations. But there were certain species that seemed more dependent on them than others. So for example, if you look at the snow leopard, they had actually a pretty wide dietary breadth. They don't seem to be the specialists that we kind of previously thought them to be, which other studies have supported as well, maybe a wider breadth. But that's really heavily skewed towards blue sheep. So 60% of snow leopard diet is exclusively blue sheep. And then the Tibetan fox is almost to the point of being an obligate species for pika, where 92% of their diet is exclusively pika. And then we had evidence of interguild predation, which I think is really interesting. It's this extreme form of competition where carnivores eat other carnivores. So we had Tibetan wolf as well as snow leopard eat some of our mesocarnivores that were present in the data set. And then, of course, looking at livestock and diet. And we actually found livestock to be relatively low. It ranged from 4% to 7%, depending on the region. But then once you start breaking it down by species, you start to kind of get a different story. So for example, of the Tibetan wolf diet, 21.7% of their overall diet are livestock species. That's pretty high. And most of that is yak. And so especially in Eastern Hanabuda Mountain, wolves seem to show a preference towards predating yak. And then with snow leopards, we see this wide variety of different prey items that they're taking. And in this data set, we didn't capture yak in their diets, but we do know from another data set that they do eat yak in this, at least in Eastern Hanabuda Mountain. So we are seeing that snow leopards kind of exploit whatever they can kind of maybe opportunistically get their paws on. And then we had smaller carnivores also have livestock present in the diet, but we're thinking that that's more of maybe taking younger animals or actually scavenging off of carcasses as opposed to actually killing the animal itself. And then kind of working into a phase 3, we're now looking at this predator guild across every season. And so that study just finished up. And so we now have those data and we're working through those to look at predator prey dynamics actually through time in one specific area, which is pretty exciting. So stay tuned for that. And we know that because there needs to be some sort of mitigation. If predators are killing livestock, then we want some non-lethal deterrent, but testing those deterrents is really difficult. But we wanted to try this it's called a fox light. It's this mechanism that's kind of portable, inexpensive, and it charges via solar power. And so when the sun goes down, it starts to flash these 3 intermittent lights randomly. And that is supposed to deter predators from approaching livestock corrals where domestic animals are kept. But we wanted to test both functional and perceived effectiveness. So it's not enough that this device would actually prevent predators from taking livestock. The herders also have to think that it works in order to use it. So we wanted to test both of those things. And we ended up using 20 different herder families. We had them split into 2 groups. So 10 herding families were our experimental group. They got 2 fox lights each. And then the other 10 did not get any fox lights. And so we interviewed them all at the beginning, asked them a series of questions, and then we waited 3 months and then re-interviewed them later. And we ended up finding over the course of the 3 months that there were 12 livestock loss events. That resulted in the loss of 3 sheep and 20 yak. And that female yak were disproportionately predated, which makes sense since they're a little bit smaller. Wolves were responsible for 11 loss events, and snow leopards were responsible for 1 loss event, according to the herders. And we ended up finding that perceived effectiveness was really high. 100% of herders thought the fox lights worked, had ideas for improvements, wanted to keep using them, and really thought that they were stopping predators from deterring livestock. But functional effectiveness gets a little bit more murky. If you did not have fox lights, you were statistically more likely to experience a livestock loss event. But 80% of those loss events happen during the day, when theoretically the fox lights would not be functioning and not be working. So we're still trying to figure that out. There was a previous study that had a similar finding where 60% of their loss events happened during the day. And so if anyone has any ideas surrounding that, I would be happy to hear them as we're working through this data set and getting it get ready to be published. But for now, I'm going to go ahead and turn everything over to Yunchuan Dai, and he's going to tell us about bears.
Okay, so my name is Dai Yunchuan. I was currently working for Chongqing Academy of Social Sciences. And in the last couple of years, I was focused on researching human-wildlife interactions on the Qinghai-Tibetan plateau, especially to study the human-bear conflicts. As you know that it's a big challenge to solve this kind of problem, to mitigate human-bear conflicts. That's why we cooperated with some international research organizations like Duquesne University, IUCN specialist groups. And today, I'm happy to share you some stories about what we have found in the field survey. And the talk today is about study on the characteristics, risks, and driving factors of human-bear conflicts in the Shenzhen region. As you know, Tibetan brown bear is a rare subspecies of Ursus actus, and it is classified as least concern by the IUCN. The population number was estimated from 5,000 to 6,000 individuals in last century, and now it's increased to about 20,000 individuals. Even the number is increasing, however, this kind of species also face lots of threats to survive their surviving in the Qinghai-Tibetan plateau, like retaliatory killings, poaching, and habitat loss. Some of the researchers studied to focus on this research from the last century. Studies including geographic distributions in history, bear ecology, and human-bear interactions. Tibetan brown bears are most of them distributed in Qinghai province and Tibet in China, but some of this kind of species are also distributed in the northwest of Yunnan province and the Sichuan province. In the last year, some researchers in Nepal also recorded some Tibetan brown bears there, but those kind of the incidents are not verified yet. Recently, as Chinese government implemented lots of strict biodiversity conservation programs and also launched the national park system. In this case, many wildlife species has increasing in the last decade. Well, this is a good thing for global biodiversity conservation. However, this is also a problem for local communities, especially for those who live in the communities, who live in the protected areas, like in Qinghai province. According to the compensation statistics from the Qinghai province, about $4 million was paid to victims as compensation from 2014 to 2017 in Qinghai province. About 42% of this cost came from incidents caused by the brown bears. So you can imagine how serious the human-bear conflict is in there. Well, some other countries, especially in Europe and in North America, also face some problems about human-bear conflicts. Well, they got a lot of advanced mitigation measures, including electric fence, steel bins, bear spray, diversion feeding, translocation, hunting. Some of the mitigation measures are very effective in practice. However, like the bear spray is one of the most useful tools to mitigate the human-bear conflicts and to protect personal safety. However, bear spray is not allowed to use for ordinary people in mainland of China right now. To mitigate the human-bear conflicts in Qinghai province and to promote coexistence between local communities and wildlife, we invite some international experts to join us to work together to solve this problem, like Shano Tucker, Davey, and Michael. And today, I'm going to answer you 3 questions. The first one is about what are the current status of human-bear conflicts in the Shenzhen region. In the last couple of years, we took many times in the field survey in Zhizhuo County of Qinghai province. Why we chose this county? Because the human-bear conflicts in the Zhizhuo County is much more serious than in other counties of Qinghai province. So that's why we spend many time there to investigate. First of all, we developed a questionnaire to connect relevant information about bear damage. A pilot survey was conducted in July 2018 to preliminarily identify areas of severe bear damage and to ensure that herders could understand the contents of the questionnaire. Moreover, questions covered the occurrence of bear damage, the representative damage type, mitigation strategies in use, any changes in bear damage frequency following the establishment of the national park. In the result, we finished 312 households, including 112 with national parks and 187 outside of the national parks. According to the interview, we found that 92% of the respondents reported that they suffered bear damage. More respondents inside of the national park suffered bear damage than outside of the national park, especially in the Yangtze River zone of the Shenzhen National Park. Over than 96% of respondents experienced bear damage in 2018. According to the results, we also found that there are three types of bear damage. The serious one is house break-ins. House break-ins were reported as the most frequent and serious damage. Nearly all respondents suffered house break-ins. It's kind of dangerous species. House break-ins, when the bear break into the houses, many destroy their doors, windows, and furniture and daily supplies. For livestock loss and predator contributions, we found brown bear is not really responsible for livestock losses. Instead, is wolf. It contributes 8% for the livestock prey losses. According to the herders' attitudes towards brown bears, we found most of herders can accept brown bears prey on livestock, but harder for them to accept brown bears attack on people and break into houses. Well, under what circumstances do brown bears attack people? We found two situations. The first is instances of brown bears attacks on humans were usually caused by sudden encounter with brown bears when the herders return from the summer pasture to their winter homes. Moreover, the local herders usually pick mushroom and deep Chinese caterpillar fungus in mountain areas, which increase the chance of herders encountering brown bears. Well, the different types of bear damage occurred in different times. Like summer is the peak season for house damage and human attacks. Herders in the Shenzhen region often live in the remote areas at higher altitude in summer, leaving their permanent winter homes behind. These uninhabited homes serve as a refuge with anthropogenic food sources for brown bears. The highest frequency of livestock depredation caused by brown bears, as reported by herders, occurred in autumn. Well, this is because herders began to move from summer pastures to winter pastures during this period, and the livestock often stray in the process of movement, providing brown bears with an easier target to hunt. Well, personal attacks caused by brown bears, assault on humans happened 3 times in summer in 2018, and once in autumn. Herders check their winter homes irregularly during this time, increasing the risk of the brown bear attack people. The local people adopt many mitigation measures. Some of the mitigation measures are used, but some are not. Most of the measures are traditional, like the nail plate, wire mesh, scarecrow, native Chinese dog. They always put the nail plate. They always put the nail plate on their walls to protect their houses. We found 16 prevention measures the local herders used. We found that 96% of the respondents adopt multiple measures. Herding dogs, keeping doors, windows open, and removing food from winter homes are the most common measures. In this case, we evaluated the local mitigation measures. We found some effective measures to protect livestock, including strap a sonar sound box to a yak and traditional grazing to protect their livestock. Also, we found some effective measures to protect their food is to remove food from winter homes. Protect house and livestock, there are 2 ways. One is to ask people to keep watch. The other way is to use sonar street light to protect their livestock and houses. About the scarecrow, sonar, keep doors, windows open, sonar radios are unuseful in practice. Okay, the second question is how to identify the risk areas and risk diffusion paths. In this section, we used economic models to predict the risk distribution areas. As we know that models are not true, but sometimes they are useful. Well, in the field survey, we use GPS to connect the occurrence records of bear damage, including like house break-ins, livestock depredation in domestic animal enclosures, and we choose some environmental factors, 3 types of them. One is geographic environment factor, brown bear ecology, and the one is associated with the human disturbance to use the max model to predict the risk areas. And for the technical part to data analysis, I will go through this quickly. Then we use the max model to predict the risk areas. Moreover, we adapt a circuit theory model to predict the risk distribution path. The circuit model is based on the circuit theory, predict the movement of random walkers between the sources and target cells across the landscape by electricity patterns. Most of the researchers use this model to predict like the gene flow, corridors design, and landscape connectivity. What we found is most of the risk areas were distributed in the national park, accounting for 58% of the total risk area. Moreover, 50% of the risk area ranged in altitude from 4,600 to 4,800 meters. In addition, we found regions of upper meadow located in the national park with a high human population density were associated with high risk. Risk diffusion paths extended southeast to northwest, connecting the inside of the Shenzhen National Park to its outside border. The next question is about what are the main drivers of the human-bear conflicts. This is critically important to understand about it. To answer this question, we invited some IUCN specialist groups like David, Michael, and Liu Fang. We invite them to the Zheduo County of Qinghai Province to join some seminars with the Shenzhen National Park Administration, Qinghai Forest and Grassland Bureau, and Forest Public Security Bureau of Zheduo County, and park rangers. We joined many seminars there to discuss about the changes in settlement patterns of the local herders, changes in food storage last decade, changes in grazing patterns, changes in structure of livestock breeds, recovery of the brown bear population, insufficient of natural food availability for bears. And according to these numbers, we proposed some hypothetical drivers of HBC, human-bear conflicts. Then we conducted herder interview, mammal surveys, molecular diet analysis, and multiple linear regression models to find the critical factors that affect the human-bear conflicts. Okay, what we have found according to the chronology of events associated with human-bear conflict in Zheduo County, we found the local herders in the Shenzhen region of Qinghai Province, they started to build the permanent winter homes in 1995. And the brown bears started to break into homes around 2000. The brown bears broke into houses in full force in 2011. So we guess the brown bear damage are related to the changes in settlement practice of herders in the Shenzhen region. According to the interview, we found the settlement practice for the local herders, that is 89% of the respondents used to transfer pastures. When the herders moved to the summer pastures, the permanent winter homes were left unattended. About the food storage practice, they also changed in different times. A total of 2% of the respondents began to change food storage practice in 2005. And both carried food as well as knocked the doors and windows of permanent winter homes during the grazing transition. Moreover, 7% of the respondents began to carry food during the grazing transition between 2006 and 2010. 6% of the respondents began to remove food and daily supplies from permanent winter homes in 2015 and kept doors and windows open to prevent brown bears from damaging their houses by increasing ease of access. So we found bear damage are associated with the changes in living habits of local herders in the Shenzhen region. We also investigated the natural food for brown bears and the population change. We found bear population is increasing in the last decade. The reason is that our Chinese government enhanced the biodiversity protection so that many of the species are increasing. Bear damage may also link to the strict wildlife conservation programs and high standards of ecological restoration. For the natural food, we found the mammoth and the blue sheep are the main natural food from brown bears are increased in the last decade. Bear damage appears to not be caused by shortage of natural food sources. According to the Transit survey, we found the mammoth also also is increased in the last decade. In 2014, the mammoth is 13 individuals per each square kilometers. To 2019, it increased to 70 individuals per square kilometers. Moreover, we use we also analyzed the brown bear diet analysis. Brown bear diet and analysis the influence of different environmental factors on brown bears utilizing human food. We found two factors. One is brown bears have learned to utilize the food in untenanted homes. Second, brown bears tend to look for human-related food near winter homes closer to rocky outcrops. Okay. Since the establishment of winter homes, brown bears have gradually learned to utilize the food in untenanted homes. Although 1% of the respondents no longer store food in untenanted homes, brown bears were reported to still frequently approach winter homes for food due to improper disposal of dead livestock and household garbage. Third, due to the influence of Tibetan Buddhism, local herders do not bury dead livestock, but rather leave the bodies around the living area to eaten by animals. Brown bears are attracted by the covering, which brings them closer to the people if left by settlements. So human-bear conflicts were related to the changes in their settlement practice, living habits, changes in fogging behavior of brown bears, and the recovery of the brown bear population. So according to the results, like the risk regions, we're testing the new mitigation measures in the risk hotspots. We are testing the fox mites in the risk regions, which provided by Charlotte Hacker. And also we are testing the divergent feeding in Suojia, the risk regions, which provided by IUCN specialist groups. We are not sure this kind of stuff are working, but we hope there are more new medications could be used in Shenzhen National Park to test it, to find the best way to solve this problem. Okay, so for more interesting stories you may find from the foreign papers, which our team published in the last 3 years. So this is all about my presentation. And here I thank all the people here, especially I have to say thank you to Charlotte Hacker. Without her help, I cannot finish off this data analysis. I cannot finish my PhD program. I cannot publish a single paper. So thank you all. Thank you, Charlotte. Okay.
Thank you so much, Yunchuan and Charlotte. Both of them were fantastic talks and super informative. And I can see a whole bunch of questions have already started coming in. So we can probably dive right into the questions so people have as much interaction with you as possible. And if anyone has questions, maybe you can either put your hand up or just unmute and introduce yourselves. And then, you can ask the question, or you can put it in the chat and I can read it out. So right now we have a question from Sandro. He says, have you not tried to make the bears learn that potential food inside houses is no longer edible through aversive conditioning? They learn that food is available inside winter homes, therefore they have to learn this is no longer true. For example, some chemicals like lithium chloride may make flour and butter not edible, making bears temporarily ill. It will take a long time to change this transition in bears, but to me, it's the only way to solve this problem. That's Sandro. I think Yunchuan is perhaps for you, Dai.
Oh, yes. So could you please explain the question again? I didn't see the text in the chat. Okay. I cannot understand. Sorry, I cannot understand about your pronunciation.
Sandro is asking if there are methods to prevent bears from coming in and taking the food. So, are there aversion methods that are being employed? For example, using chemicals like lithium chloride in flour, which might, the flour that you use to eat, which might make the bears sick. So then they won't come back over time because they keep getting sick when they eat it. So are there aversion technologies used as a prevention method?
Oh, you mean just remove the food from the winter homes to protect their food? But even the
Perhaps may I explain
better.
in words? It will probably be quicker. No, I mean that your bears have learned. I have been in Shanghai a couple of years ago, twice, and I was told about this problem. I also saw the huts, the winter huts of the herders. The bears have learned that people leave edible food like flour, like butter, inside the winter homes.
Yeah.
And since bears are highly traditional animals, and the mother is teaching all sources of food to the cubs for 2 or 3 years, so the habit has spread among the population of bears. It will be very hard to prevent a bear to break through anything because bear-proof stuff, I think it is still to be invented. But maybe they could learn that the food is no longer edible. So the shepherds should be taught to leave some flour and butter, unedible, food made unedible through some chemical, like for example, lithium chloride, which has been used to prevent damage by coyotes on sheep farming. And then little by little, the bears might learn that the food is no longer available inside the houses. Since humans made the bear learn that there is food inside the winter homes, now they should I can't find the English word, to forget, to make the bears to forget that the food is still available, is edible, to make it inedible. And it should be some chemical which will produce an effect straight away.
That's right.
So that they will learn that the flour is disgusting. It makes them feel bad. Of course, the shepherds, when they come back after the winter to their homes, should also remember that their flour is no longer edible.
That's right.
They would feel sick.
Yes, Sandra. Yes, yeah, we found this kind of stuff. Like brown bears, they have the good memories. They can remember the people. You mean like the winter houses store food? Like the last year, the bear broke into these houses. They can remember it. Then next year, they took their next generations to the houses because they can remember the location. And especially for the local herders there, they are Tibetan people. They're kind of the smell like the butter or flour or yak or steak smells like this kind of smell are very attractive to brown bears. Even the houses are empty. They are still walk around in the winter homes. Another thing is not only about the smell, but also about like their habits. They always throw out like the dead livestock. They are them. They are not bury the dead livestock. They put their like the yak, sheep dead bodies around the winter homes and the garbage. And the brown bears will always look for food around the winter homes. Even they keep the doors, windows open, no food anymore in the houses. But the bears are used to looking for food. Like if they treat the winter homes like a food supply stations sometimes. Like even they don't have food, they are used to always go around there. And some of the brown bears even stay all night in the winter homes. Just now you mentioned like to use some chemical stuff to eliminate the kind of smells for the winter homes to change their fogging behavior.
I didn't mean that. I mean to make the food left in the house unedible to the bears, so that
unedible, right?
Yeah, not edible, disgusting, so that they
Oh.
will disenlearn, I don't know how to say it in English, that the food is edible inside the houses. You see my point? Since humans taught the bears that there is food inside the homes, now they should teach the bears that the food is no longer available.
That's right.
It will take very long because the habit will have to spread from mother to cubs through the population. But I think that's probably the only way out. Otherwise, the habit will keep spreading even outside Qinghai.
Okay, thank you, Sandra. Yeah, I'm thinking that we use kind of like the spray to put in the winter homes, like to set it as automatic. When the brown bears, touch the switch, the spray will start, and if the bear smell the spray, it will teach them, do not come here. It's kind of dangerous. It's disgusting in the winter homes, to change their following behavior. Do not walk around in the winter homes anymore.
Great. Thanks so much. So, yeah, thanks so much, Yunchuan, and thanks, Sandro, for a very engaging question. There are a few more questions in the chat. So one is from Kostu for Charlotte. By any chance, were you able to do any individual IDs of snow leopards from the scats? Wondering if there's an opportunity to understand if there are variations in diets of individual cats, similar to what is observed in, for example, in tigers.
Yeah, so one of my dream projects is to answer this question about problem individuals. Like, are certain snow leopards just constantly taking livestock? And we're hoping to do that with the long-term data set from East Bernhana-Buddha Mountain. So we have samples of snow leopards where we could potentially individually ID them and look at differences over the season. And so we are planning on doing that. It's something that's, the samples are in China, I'm in the United States, but Dr. Yu Guanzhang's lab and his students are trying to get that up off the ground to actually do individual ID. So hopefully we'll have those data, yeah.
Thanks, Charlotte. And we have a question, I think this is for Yunchuan. How can we address the problem of improper waste disposal? Is it a matter of awareness or infrastructure or both? Improperly managed dumps can also be attractive to packs of feral dogs in many areas.
The plastic littering?
Sorry, Yunchuan?
Yeah, could you please ask the speaker to ask me questions? I think it's much easier for me to understand.
Okay, sorry. Aliana, would you like to ask the question directly?
Yeah, sure, yeah. So I was just wondering, how could we address the problem of improper waste disposal that you mentioned?
Okay.
Is it like awareness of the people in the area, or is it a problem of like just the methods and infrastructure and materials and stuff they need to properly dispose of waste is not there, or is it kind of both, or? Yeah.
Okay. So the Shenzhen region is kind of remote, right? They don't have the many infrastructures there. It's just like the winter homes and the summer tents. They don't have like the special garbage stations. They always just put the garbage around their homes, and they do not bury the garbages. The garbages, many of them are about like the bottles, the plastics and the clothes, and some dead livestock or some daily supplies. Well, last time we found the scat of the bear scat. We found some plastic stuff from their scat. Yeah, they just eat the plastics with some food together. They cannot distinguish this is a plastic or this is food. Like people always use plastic to wrap the food, throw away. They just eat.
Yeah, so the bear will just eat the whole thing, won't they?
Yeah, they just eat the whole thing. So this is a real big problem for the remote area in China. Yeah, yeah, because they don't have the specialists to deal with the garbage. But now this kind of situation is changing. They send some park rangers to deal with the garbage to dispose of it. But something is hard to dispose, especially for the livestock dead body. It's not only about attract the brown bears to the winter homes, but also spread diseases. So
Yes.
I wrote a proposal before to the government that they should deal with the dead livestock properly. Even they do not, but they should transfer to other places to deal with it.
Mm-hmm.
It has two benefits. One is to change the brown bears to fogging around the winter homes. The second one is to prevent from spreading diseases.
Definitely. So increasing the infrastructure would be a
Thanks, Yunchuan.
Okay.
And thanks, Aliana. I can see Wen has his Wen's questions next, and I can see his hand up. So Wen, would you like to ask your question?
Yes, I just want to follow up with Dai's answer and also the question asked. I think that's also a failure of the corporate social responsibility, because the both Pepsi and Coca-Cola have been actively advertising and its products in the local communities in Tibet. So the communities in Qinghai and Tibet, local and especially Tibetan population, they drink Coca-Cola like drink water. So, and then they haven't been able to bring back all the plastic packaging bottles off the region. So the plastic littering in this ecosystem have been very serious problem. So actually, Dai just answered part of my question about plastic littering, any negative impact on these two species. So that's my first question. Second question is, I know that in Qinghai, there's a lot of, as most regions of this grassland have been fenced, use a mental iron fence to divide it among households. So I know that that's fence have a serious negative impact on the migration of some species. But about the area that the Sun leopard and Tibetan brown bear lives, this area also be fenced by these mental bars and etc. 我用中文说一遍吧，用不用？
Oh, you mean the pasture fences have some negative impact on other species like the antelope, right? Donkeys.
Yeah.
And
so the fence, the household fence, because the local government, the government have been installing these fences to, and then they have a negative impact on antelope. But would that also have a negative impact on the brown bear? And that's one question. And then the first question is about the plastic littering, plastic waste in this region. So, but you answered partially about you found some of plastic things wrapping in the body of a brown bear. But it is a serious issue in
that's right. Because the government, even the local people, they just bought the wire mesh, just like you mentioned, the fences, the metal fences to protect their homes. But this kind of stuff are not working for brown bears. They dig them they can dig the hole to get inside of the room. We found that. And some GF also provide some fences. They changed it. Now it's working much better. And just now you mentioned the fences, the pasture fences for livestock. Yeah, it has some negative impact to some other species, but not to brown bears, because brown bears is huge body. They can cross it. They cannot hurt it. Some of the fences are very negative to arguments, like the donkeys or antelopes. They killed many of the species. Like when they cross the fences, they got stuck in the fences. But I don't think this is a good way to mitigate the human-bear conflict. It has many negative impact to the species and the ecosystem if they just you install the fences on the pastures to influences the pastures, other enclosure for the livestock. It's not good for the ecosystem. It's not good for the livestock. It's not good for the like some arguinate animals. Just now you mentioned the first question, the plastic, the Coca-Cola, like the people drink the Coca-Cola, the soda water, just like they drink water, right? They drink or not. When you went to the, we went to the households for the interview. We found many people there. They treat us many bottles like Coca-Cola, Sprite, everything there. They like to drink. So in this case, they produce lots of the garbage, the nutrients. But however, those kind of stuff are not dealt with properly. But now some park rangers, some volunteers went there to collect all the stuff to change this kind of environment.
Thanks so much, Yunchuan, for the very detailed response. And we have a few more questions in the chat, but I can see Charlotte has been answering them. So thanks, Charlotte. Actually, Charlotte,
no problem.
A lot of the questions in the chat. And we're almost running out of time. We have a few minutes left. Are there any last final questions for Charlotte and Yunchuan? You can either unmute and ask or type. I can see a few people typing, so maybe while we wait in. I saw a question a little bit up ahead where I think this was again for Dai. Are there any instances of bear attacks in the summer pastures? Sorry, Dai. Are there any instances of bear attacks in the summer pastures?
Sorry.
Yeah. Sorry. And Danielle, I can see your question in the chat, and I think Charlotte answered that.
Yeah, so we can't look at problem individuals right now, but we're hoping to individually ID to get an idea of who's eating what, and sex differences, things like that, because we can also tell male versus female. But we're not quite sure yet how that's playing into the whole system. And we're hoping to be able to do that with snow leopards and wolves. But in order to be doing it with all of the carnivores, that would be a pretty intensive effort, but it would be a really nice addition to the study to look at.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry, I meant to ask it from Yunchuan too, but thank you, Henry, for answering. Mm-hmm. But for bears, I mean, did you account for problem individuals, or were their whole population were inducing that problem? That's my question.
Yeah, we haven't individually ID'd the bears either. There might be a way to monitor by looking at, if we were doing camera trapping or put up videos, but we didn't do that. So we're not sure if in our data set, if those data are represented by maybe just one bear that's like wreaking havoc in a certain area or not.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Charlotte. Yeah, we are trying to do the the identification for the problem bears. We call that problem bears, to identify it. Which one is problem bear? Then we will find some specific measures to deal with the problem bears, like the translocation or something. So this is kind of way to mitigate this human bear conflicts. This is what the IUCN specialist group, David, told me, that you should find a special way to identify the problem bears by like the DNA barcoding or something, or to see there like the tattoo of the neck, the corners, they can figure out the problem bears by the camera traps or something. So yeah, we're just working like when we install the divergent faders with the camera traps, we will say which bear will utilize the divergent faders. We also install some camera traps in the winter homes. We also record some images and videos about the bear, but now it's hard to tell. It's hard to identify because the image is not very clear, but we have to see their tattoo of their color, So it's hard to identify the problem bear right now, but we are still working on this. Yeah.
Thank you, Dai. Do we have any other Questions, I think we've answered most of it that's come up in the chat as well. Any others? You can unmute and ask or put it in. Okay, so there's one more coming in. Aliana says, looking into the wider impacts of livestock carcass disposal methods would be super interesting. I think that's a comment. Yes, it would be interesting. So I think, okay, I think we're almost, right?
Has anyone examined the vulture question with respect to livestock disposal? Usually in the TAR, if there's a dead animal, the vultures clean it up pretty quickly, be it the Himalayan griffins or the lammergeiers. I was just wondering if anyone looked at vulture populations and the relationship to livestock disposal in problem bear areas in Qinghai.
Not that I know of. I mean, it seems something that someone should be working on, but I don't know off the top of my head anyone that's, I mean, we see it all the time, like flocks of vultures, and clearly they play a huge role in that ecosystem and providing that ecosystem service, but I'm not sure if anyone's.
Well, just with the 90% decline of the vulture population, particularly in India and along the Himalaya, it might be an issue. I've heard that for sky burial purposes in Qinghai, there are a lot fewer vultures around these days than in the past. So something to think about.
Yeah.
How that affects the bear problem if there's more livestock carcasses around, right?
Right, yeah, if there's fewer vultures, more carcasses. Yeah, could definitely see that being a problem.
Cool, thanks so much, John. Oh, Riaz. Hi, Riaz. Riaz has a question. Hi. Go ahead.
Actually, my internet is unstable, so I tried, but I couldn't. My question is actually the availability of natural food. Is it because brown bear numbers are increased, so there is competition, or is it because the habitat is degraded? There is
Sorry, Riaz, you're breaking. Could you maybe type it in the chat? I can read it out.
I have typed it. So.
Oh, did I miss it?
I got your question.
Yeah, because my internet went and.
Okay, but
yeah,
your question.
Yeah, there's something wrong with your singer, I guess. So it's not very clear, but I can guess your question is. Yeah. So the human bear conflict in the Shenzhen region is not about the natural food shortage. It's not really associated with the habitat degradation or habitat loss, because we found that we think the critical thing is that the flocking behavior of brown bears have been changed. Like I just mentioned that even the winter hens have no food, but they still walk around there, stay overnight there. With like they think like the food in the winter homes is much more easier to access, and the food in the winter homes is much higher. I mean, it's much easier to get the protein, to get the energies than the brown bears digging the mammals or pikers. So this is a foggy behavior changing. It's not about like the natural food shortage. It's not about the habitat reduction or something. So this is what I think. They're changing behavior. Why they're fogging changing behavior? Why the fogging behavior changes? Because of the herders, the local herders. The local herders practice like for the settlement practice, like their food storage practice. They're just affect each other, you know. The people affect the bear will affect the people back. So this kind of stuff is interaction between people and bears. So my thinking is that the fogging behavior change of brown bears is the main reasons of human bear conflicts, especially for bears break into the houses. I hope you understand. That's
Thanks.
what I thought. That's what I thought. We can discuss more.
Yeah, thanks, Yunchuan. That was very clearly explained. And okay, we have I think we have time for one last question, and Tanuj has it because we've run out of time. So Tanuj says, so his internet's not very good, so I'm going to read it out. Sorry, Dai. So Tanuj asks, have bears been reported to cause agricultural damage in the landscape? Not in the houses where the harvest might be stored, but in the field. Okay, so basically he's asking if there's if the bears cause damage, agricultural damage in the fields.
Okay. Actually, they don't have agriculture there. Only the berry wheat. In the Shenzhen, their pasture area, no agriculture anymore. They are just herders. They herd livestock. No agriculture, no like the corns or potatoes or tomatoes or something else. They don't have it because it's very high there. The average altitude is over than 4,500 meters. So the brown bears do not damage the agriculture at all. They don't have it.
Thanks, Yunchuan. That sounds like the Changtang then, Tanuj. So Tanuj also works in the Changtang, and that's an extension to the...
It's kind of different from the brown bear damage and the black bear damage, because black bear live in the lower places. They have like in Sichuan, even in my hometown, Chongqing, like in Yunnan, they got some black bears in Qinghai Mountains. Human black bear conflicts. One of the conflict type is agricultural damage. It's totally different as brown bears in the Qinghai-Tibetan plateau.
Great. So thanks, everybody. We're a little bit over time. So I think that was the last question. Thank you so much, Charlotte and Yunchuan, for a fantastic and very, very informative talk. And huge thank you to the awesome participants we've had. It's been very interactive and lots of questions. So thank you, everybody. And just before we close, Justine has an announcement.
Hi, everyone. I just wanted to double thank our participants, and just to let you know that our steering committee at the SLN met yesterday, and we highlighted how we want to feature other species, other kind of focuses across snow leopard habitats and even wider. So today was really great to bring that first focus for the Snow Leopard Network webinars. So if any of you have colleagues or other researchers that you know that works on different species or different focuses, also snow leopards, please get in touch. We would really like to welcome them and to give talks in the future. But a huge thank you to Charlotte and Dai for coming together, and for all these participants for joining us. It's great to see these webinars keep growing and so many questions and conversations going. So if you need to get in touch, you can write to Reki, and we can always forward the questions to Dai and Charlotte to keep these conversations going. Thank you. And thank you, Ranjini, for facilitating.